Thank you, Tanya. And so excited to be here and doing this together, and really looking forward to this conversation. I am the author of two books, Pregnant Girl, and my newest book, Student Parent. I am the founder and CEO of Generation Hope, and we are a national nonprofit that advocates for parenting college students over the country. And we also directly serve about 200 teen parents in college, in the DC metro, in Dallas, and in New Orleans. And I'm also a mother of five and have had one of my five children already gone through the college experience. So I'm also speaking from that perspective as well.
Great. Thank you, Maya.
Hey y'all, my name is Maya Moore. I'm from Southeast Louisiana. I'm currently a parenting student at Normandale Community College, planning to finish up my associates in the fall and transfer to a 4 year in the spring. I originally started off as a nursing student. I was going through an associate's in nursing program, and it would qualify me to sit for the NCLEX and work as an RN. But it just wasn't the best fit for a parenting student at the time. So I'm switching over to pursue a Bachelor of Science in Health Sciences.
And my name is Mikala. I live in San Diego, California. I'm a senior at UCSD and a mom of two young boys. So happy to be here and looking forward to graduation and what's beyond as a student parent.
I'm very excited for you, Michaela. You've gone the gamut to get here. So I'm like so happy that you're almost there. And congratulations, and congratulations, Maya, on being so close to that associate's degree. I cannot wait to see what the future holds for you. So we're going to go ahead and get started. My first question is for Nicole. This book was a great follow-up to your first. I like your first. I like just remember reading Pregnant Girl and being so excited about it. So when this one came out, I was obviously very excited as well. Can you talk to us a little bit about what drove you to write this book and what you hope others will take away from it?
Yeah, absolutely. So Pregnant Girl was, a deeply personal memoir about my experience of being a teen mother and putting myself through college and all the challenges that I went through and really what led to me starting Generation Hope. But in Pregnant Girl, I weave in like policy implications and data and some context for my own personal journey that kind of put it in the perspective of what was going on in the country when it came to a lot of the issues that teen pregnancy and student parenting really touch on. And people would come to me and say, like, you shared this data point or you shared this policy. I had no idea. I didn't know that was a thing, and were really curious to dig a little bit deeper into the policy context of how many families are navigating poverty and the real challenges of economic mobility through the lens of parenting. And it really was also, I think, for me, writing the book, I was really interested and intrigued by the policies that I was navigating without knowing it as a teen mother, and wanted to go deeper myself. And so Student Parent really came from a curiosity, I think, of both readers and of myself, of understanding what are the most significant barriers that student parents are facing, and how do we get here? What is the historical context of childcare, for example, and how unaffordable it is in this country, or food insecurity? How we got here, how does it impact a parent that wants to go to school and higher education? And then how do we move forward? How do we remove that barrier or try to mitigate it as much as possible? And it was really an amazing experience in writing the book, just to go deeper and to really understand, how we did get to this place and how difficult it is for families to achieve the American dream, with the current structures that we have in place in the systems. I'm hoping, one of the big things that I hope people take away from this is figuring out what is the piece that they bring to the table. I talk in the book about there is no magic wand for how we're going to make college more attainable and more of a reality for parents. But it's going to take up, it's a puzzle. It's going to take all of these pieces coming together, and each of us have the ability to contribute a piece to that puzzle. And I talk in the book about there's a concept, the casserole ministry, and
Mm-hmm.
it's based on my son's preschool, and the fact that at the core of that is that we often do book drives and backpack drives and winter coat drives, and all of those things are really important. but we also need to address and that's the casserole ministry, right? But we
Right.
also need to address the underlying policies that make it so hard for families to afford a winter coat or to put food on the table or to buy a backpack for back to school. And I really hope people take that also from this book.
Yeah, I was like, there was many moments during that where I was like, preach, girl, preach. Like I was like, yes, like I was glad that you hit on so many things. And I think, sorry, I'm diverging a little bit from the questions that I sent you, but one of like there was a few moments of like one, there's like such deep history within like how we got here within the book that was
Yeah.
to me so powerful and honestly just devastating. Like
Mm,
reading it and just thinking through like how like these policies were like intricately put in place to hold others back, right? And I think that there is this fear of like of not a like the idea of like power is shared instead of like of losing power, right? And to me that was so profound. I felt like even though
mm,
you never outright said that, like those words, like to me I just thought like this is such a profound understanding of like how history like really impacted where many are today and so I think emotionally there were moments where I had to take a break because I was just like this is just it's
it's hard.
heartbreaking but it's so
Yeah.
important like I think everyone needs to read this book just for that historical context, especially for advocates, right, that are doing the work day in and day out of how we got here. But the other part that really hit me was how much needs to be done and at times feeling overwhelmed. And I was just curious,
Mm.
as you were writing the book, did you ever, and I agree, it's like it takes a village, like we all play a role in this, but like were there ever times while writing the book that you ever felt like a little overwhelmed with like there's so much that needs to be undone and refit like fixed like to get
Yeah.
us there? I was just curious.
No, it's a great question. And I think going back to what you just said, I think the other thing, the deeper that you get into these issues and the barriers, the more you realize the intentionality behind these policies and the fact that we're going to need intentionality to get out of this, right? We're going to need to
100%.
intentionally build policy that removes, these barriers because they were intentionally built to establish the barriers. And I think that most people, don't necessarily think about policy work in that way, but it's critical for us. And I think it speaks to what you just said, which is, yes, there is so much work to be done. And I think in the book, it really drives home the long-standing policies that have been in place and the deep uprooting that we're going to have to do to get to a better place. But what I also I balance in the book, and I try to really uplift advocates and voices and people in the book who historically or present day have been amazing in helping to turn the tide, amazing in helping to amplify what needs to be changed and what needs to be fixed. And I think that's where I would find my hope as I was writing it was being able to cite the research and cite the voices and to really talk about there's so many incredible people who have and who are currently doing such incredible advocacy work. And I think that's what gave me hope in the moments where I'm like, wow, like there's a lot that needs to be done, but there are some incredible people, many incredible people who have and are currently doing the good work and getting into the good trouble that we need to get us to a better place.
Yeah, 100%. And I feel that when we're talking with like when we're working on different policies, so TSC works a lot on, basic needs access and removing barriers within higher education, which we're going to get to in just one second on related to like pathways for students. But and some of those pieces and when we obviously have this partnership with 40 other organizations that are part of the coalition and then we work with others external to even the coalition and just knowing that there are so many people that are on the same page and really trying to move towards the same goals, I would agree is like something that kind of gives hope and joy. And you see parenting students such as Mikala and Miah here, and the impact that they're having. Like there's hope. There's hope for the future. So in your book, you highlight like how parenting students are often pushed into potentially workforce training programs that aren't necessarily the right fit for them, and also don't necessarily lead to higher paying wages. Can you touch on that a little bit more? And is this something you often see with the parenting students you work with and your Jen Hope speaks with?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we know that parents, particularly mothers, women of color, are often funneled into specific professions. If you're looking at those professions, sometimes it's, medical billing, early education, professions where you're barely making the minimum wage, you're barely able to put food on the table for your family. And while, these are essential roles, they're critical roles, they are not enough to sustain a family. And we really need to be thinking about that when we're talking about parenting students because they have mouths to feed. They need to put a roof over their children's heads. And so it's really important for us to be looking at the full spectrum of opportunities and the full spectrum of professions, especially really helping parenting students consider those professions that are going to be family sustaining, that are really going to allow them to put food on the table and to have promotion opportunities and all of the things that we know are critically important to economic mobility and sustainability. And I think there is often this push of let's just get you finished as fast as we can because you do have a child. And really, that urgency can create a lot of challenges for a career trajectory for a parenting student. And we want to be encouraging, students, all students, to be looking at, again, the full spectrum of positions and to be considering all of those as viable options for them. And we have stories of, sometimes a professor in a nursing program will tell a parenting student, this is going to be too much for you. And so, here's what I want you to consider instead. And so we really need to not only from advising, but from faculty, from administrators, policymakers, everyone across the board, really thinking differently and changing the narrative about what's possible for parenting students because it's critical that these families and all families are able to really have careers that allow them to provide and to have a clear path to economic mobility.
Yeah, absolutely. I would fully agree. Miah, this question kind of goes over to you. So you were going down more of like a traditional workforce route, but like looking at a nursing program. But as a parenting student, like it wasn't like that's where your passion lies is helping with the healthcare of others. And as a parenting student for you though, you found that it was going to be difficult to do that program. Can you talk a little bit about that issue and some of the barriers you faced in trying to pursue that career?
Yeah, so I started the nursing program, and I think it's interesting that you like mentioned that as a program, Nicole, because um, I started the nursing program, and I chose to pursue being an RN because of the pathway being more quick. So being able to complete an RN in 2 years and then be able to provide for me and my daughter. Um, but for me, all of the coursework like leading up to it was fine. I maintained a 4.0 until I got into the program and still like within my first semester. Um, the anatomy, physiology, organic chem, like all of that was fine. But it wasn't until I got to the clinical component of the nursing program where you have the expectation to be at a clinical at 6 in the morning, and my daycare doesn't open up until 7:30, and then the clinical could also be an hour away, right? So now I've got to be up at 4 or 5, and then if I don't have someone trustworthy that can come to my house while my daughter is asleep and then take her to school, I'm kind of in an awkward position. And I wasn't really fully able to anticipate that because I went to the seminars and stuff before the program started, and I asked the question, is this feasible for someone with a 3-year-old? Like, and they kept talking about like the rigor and stuff like that. And for me, that again was not the intimidating part. It was like the time part, like the physical,
Mm-hmm.
physically having to be somewhere. And so I also asked the question, well, how flexible are you about clinicals? Like if I can't make it one day because I just don't have help. And I didn't get a good answer. I didn't even get a clear answer to even know like, okay, this is not a realistic expectation for you right now. You really need to make sure that you have someone who can cover your back, watch your back, which I didn't have at the time. So definitely the clinical aspect was what made it difficult. So yeah, and but other than that, it would have been a great option. There are opportunities to get promoted. It's kind of like an intermediate. It's not really like completely a trade, and it's not really completely like white collar, but there are options where you can, grow and move up in within the hospital systems. Like my old boss, he now manages like Fairview Health Systems, but there's other people who just are they're comfortable working as an RN. They work there for years and they make $70 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so it was a good option, but just that clinical component isn't, I guess, like talked about enough, or really realistic for someone who has another responsibility.
Yeah. I want to touch on something that just made me angry. The fact that they were talking about the rigor, that was going to be what was challenging for you. Like, who are they to, like, who are they to assume that, one? And then two, like, bring that up as what would be the barrier for you. Like to me, that's really, that it shouldn't be, but it's mind blowing. I am like so impressed that you are like, no, I'm going to keep doing that. And I think I've seen with multiple nursing students, that's where the challenge is. If you are a single parent trying to care for your child with literally no extra help, like how do you do these clinicals, whether it's for a teaching position, or whatever that might be. And so I think that that's something that needs to be looked at, because again, like I have a friend of mine who is a parenting student and she wants to be a teacher, but her trying to get to just the like watching like the classroom observations and those types of stuff. Her daughter has severe health issues, and so the childcare isn't even eligible. Like, there's C campus on her campus, but she's not eligible to use C campus because of the health issues her daughter faces. Yet education, being a teacher, is the best thing that she could do, because she could be at the school with her daughter when her daughter gets to that school age level. And so I think that there's a lot within that we could look at much deeper. So thank you, Miah, for sharing that. Nicole, in the book, you highlighted a number of barriers parenting students face, and how advocates can work to remove them. What do you think are the top two or three that are the most pressing issues?
Yeah, absolutely. And I always say this with the caveat that again, it's a puzzle and there is no magic wand. I wish there were. But I think if we look at some of the big ones, college affordability is one. We have got to look at the skyrocketing costs of college tuition in this country, and really think about, is this a real viable option for people who are experiencing low income. And, college cannot just be reserved for the well-resourced in America, in this country. It's not going to serve us from an economic standpoint. It's not going to serve our communities. We just look at, your friend who wants to be a teacher, that requires a college education. So we have to make sure that college is accessible and affordable for everyone, and that it's a real option for anyone who wants to go to school. So college affordability, and I do have a chapter in the book that talks about, how do we address the skyrocketing costs of college, and how do we get here, and what do we need to do, and investing in Pell Grants and investing in various policies that really try to address the costs of higher education. Um, the other skyrocketing cost in this country is childcare. And for parenting students, you can make college extremely affordable. You could have zero tuition, but if you don't have quality, affordable childcare for your little one, so you could go to class, you're not going to be able to go to school. So we really have to look at, what are our options? What are our policy levers for childcare affordability in this country? Looking at New Mexico, looking at states that have really made strides in this area, learning from them and figuring out what can we do. Again, this is not just about families. This is about our economy, and what we need, and really seeing childcare as a workforce issue that's critical to us as a country. And an education issue. I talk about, hearing presidents talk in the State of the Union about childcare, and only through the lens of workforce, but it's an education issue as well. And, that's something important for us to think about. And then lastly, we need a higher ed system that is really designed to support parenting students. If a college is affordable, but we have systems within that college and policies within that institution that are excluding parenting students, that are making them feel like they don't belong and pushing them out of majors, right? Then we are not going to see parenting students excel. So we have to have dollars for capacity building, particularly for under-resourced institutions, community colleges, MSIs, HBCUs, tribal colleges, really making sure that these institutions that are serving the share of parenting students in this country have the resources to make the changes. A lot of what we do in higher education is about what we've always done in higher education, not necessarily that it's the most effective. And many of those policies are exclusionary for many student populations and in particular for student parents. So I would say those are three big ones. But I talk in the book about, we've got to increase the minimum wage. We have to revisit the child tax credit. We have to look at emergency aid grants that we saw during COVID, really being utilized by institutions and have now kind of fizzled out. But we saw the impact of those, short-term financial supports to help a student fix a tire on a car or be able to, make that to the child care tuition payment, for that month. So there are a lot of things that we need to put in place, but I would put those as my top three.
I think those are really solid, and there's a push to address kind of all of those three different areas. But so I'm going to open this up to Mikala and Miah. I'll start, Mikala. I'm going to start with you first since we haven't heard a lot from you today. What do you think are the top three challenges that parenting students face? And do you feel like all three of you could probably have three totally separate answers and they would all be right at that same level? So I'm just curious to hear about your experience and what's been the biggest barriers for you.
Yeah, so like the first note I wrote on the top of my paper to answer this question was one size shoe does not fit all. And that kind of seems like the theme of our conversation today. I put, childcare, and there's like two things that I really like identified in childcare that have been a struggle for me as a student parent is one, childcare hours, if on a campus, like if your campus has a center, are built around faculty's like 9 to 5 schedule, right? And then there's that professor who teaches this one niche course that you need for your major, or I need for my major because I'm a sociology major. And so I have to take these really, specific sociology classes that only teaches on Thursday nights at 8 p.m. and only has his labs on Saturday afternoons. And so childcare is not open Thursday at 8 p.m. That's also bedtime for me and my kids. And Saturdays are full of the kids' sports. And so professors not being, open or willing to hear from their student parents or their students at all and what might work for them, because they like teaching at that time and they've done it for years. So, their other student parents figured it out. Why can't you? And so it's really one size, shoe doesn't fit all because I don't have the same support system that some of my other friends have. They have grandparents and they have their parents that are here locally. My mom lives in Kentucky and my dad is also a student parent. So we're stuck here balancing, childcare. I also put, and this is something I recently experienced, is as we get degrees and we start to climb the economic ladder, I got my associates and then I started working in policy and I've been climbing that ladder of economic mobility. You not age out, but you like range out of those low income childcare programs. And it's like, you get a very simple announcement. Hey, so we've got 5 buckets. You don't fit in any of the 5 buckets anymore. You got to find a new program next year. And there's not even that like, gap period or a year in between. So it's great. I've climbed the economic mobility ladder. Whoa, I've got a $2,000 childcare bill coming my way. And so there needs to be room for our student parents to actually be able to climb and succeed and save rather than, oh, you don't fit in the bucket anymore. You did what we wanted you to do, so get on out. And then I
Sorry,
already touched
Michaela,
on,
can I jump on that really fast?
yeah.
And Nicole, like you talked about this in your first book, Pregnant Girl. And one of the things that stands out to me both is that what that does is then it pushes parenting students to either drop out because how are they going to pay for that childcare? Or it makes them not want to work because then they can't finish their so it creates this catch 22. So sorry, yeah, thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that.
And then lastly, for me, it kind of touches back on those professors that are unflexible, who have no flexibility in deadlines. If I ask to turn it in 2 days late, it's like, no, my policy is this. If I bent for you, I'd have to bend for everybody else. And it's like they didn't read the paragraph above where I explained everything that I'm going through in the situations. It was just like, nope, policy's policy. Um, and recently I had a family emergency happen and I was talking to a professor and I was like, I need this course to graduate. Is there any flexibility? And I got told, just drop the course. Take it next semester. And I'm like, I'm one quarter away from graduating. How can you tell me to drop the course? Take it next semester. You're not factoring in the cost of my tuition, my completion rate, my childcare. When are you going to offer this class? What if you don't offer it next quarter and I've got to wait 2 more quarters? And so I really wish I could see more flexibility from my professors. When I explain, like, I'm a student parent balancing XYZ. So those are the challenges that I see.
Hmm. Maya.
Yeah, I would totally agree with Michaela. This is something that I've actually talked about with my faculty program directors at Campus Compass. They're kind of asking us like, what are the top 5 things that student parents need? Um, and that's something that I really agree with, like navigating that gap where you're not like a high earner, you're just barely out of the range of being low income. And because there's really no incentive to like just barely make it. I mean, that was actually the reason that I decided to go back to school. I took my SIE and I passed that, which is like an entry level finance exam. And then I was studying for my Series 7 and I got a job offer from Ameriprise. And so I put in my entry level salary into my spreadsheet that I had that showed me, I gave evaluation to all my benefits, my not having to pay for childcare, so what childcare would look like, not having to pay for healthcare because I had Medicaid through the state, and getting food stamps, like the other basic needs. And I was going to break even after working 40 hours a week, paying for healthcare, like private healthcare through my job, paying for childcare all week, and then not having food stamps. Like I literally broke even to work 40 hours a week and be away from my daughter. So I was like, I have to go back to school because I need to enter into the workforce making a certain amount that justifies me actually working. And it sounds sad because it is sad.
Hmm.
Um, and so I totally agree with you, Michaela. I mean, even if you don't think about it that specifically, that is the reality that it is difficult to justify working sometimes, as someone who's eligible for benefits. And that's not what it's there's no dignity in that really. It feels like it was like I gotta do what I gotta do moment for my daughter so I can make sure, because then what if I lose this job? And then I'm in this income bracket that again I'm not eligible for benefits. So I agree with you. Like that is I think one of the top challenges. Another one tied to that is like financial literacy. Because I feel like a lot of student parents that I've talked to, they don't really understand the financial situation that they're in, and they'll take on another job that then disqualifies them for the earned income tax credit, for example, and they're not sort of aware of that and able to plan for the future because nobody taught them about credit, nobody taught them about taxes. They're kind of out here doing whatever they can do in the moment, and then they set themselves up to be in a worse off position. So I think financial literacy, the lack of there being a bridge to the other side, and then also childcare, right? Like childcare that is realistic. And for my program, I wound up getting a scholarship for childcare, and it paid up to $25,000 a year. It was a Think Small scholarship, but it paid it directly to the school because I didn't go to a C campus school, and I also didn't qualify for the county childcare assistance program. However, after I didn't find this out until I found it out the hard way, after you miss 25 days of school of classes for your kid, then you have to start paying the for childcare. And I went to a program that only had a full-time option because it was the only thing open in time for me to go to school. Um, they told me all they had was a full-time option, but I could bring Zuri whenever I wanted. Not realizing that once I got to that 25-day threshold, I was going to have to pay. So the childcare wasn't really realistic. You know what I mean? There wasn't enough information, there wasn't enough transparency, and I had to just kind of go with with whatever was available so that I could start school. So, and they also didn't have, again, like the early morning hours or the late night hours. And sometimes you don't have class that day and you're really tired and you don't want to bring your kid to school and you want to, like, I mean, I have a 3-year-old, so it's not like school age, but there's no, like, again, like flexibility and understanding of the nuanced lives that we live. So, yeah, I agree
Or
with you,
what if your
Michaela,
child
through
is
and through.
sick or you're sick or, there's so many, yeah, like you said, nuances. One of the things that I keep hearing is the economic return on investment for getting that program, getting that degree, getting that credential. And research shows that on average, parenting students, single mothers in particular, who finish a bachelor's degree end up making at least $675,000 more over their lifetime, which is like close to $750,000 more over their lifetime, which creates that economic mobility for, and it like they no longer like my understanding would be that you probably don't want to utilize these benefits. The whole reason why you're going to school is so you can be able to be a contributor to, like work. You want to work. You want to raise your child. Like I've grown. I was a single parent. I was a parenting student, and I remember thinking like I cannot wait. For me, it was my master's, but I remember thinking like I cannot wait till I get this because it's going to make such a difference for me and my children economically. And I think sometimes we forget that piece in the conversation that we're having. And going back to the conversation we said about pushing students into like, well, this will get you educated, like this will get you into a job fast, but getting into a job fast doesn't necessarily provide that return on investment based on which direction that they're going. So this is all really helpful and impactful. One of the things too that we talk about, Nicole, you talk about some of your experiences with your advisors, and can you touch on the role you see advisors playing? Like we've already started this conversation like throughout and it's kind of been woven in, but I would love to really touch more on the impact advisors have on helping or hurting students' abilities to get to and through education. So yeah, we'll start with you, Nicole.
Yeah, absolutely. So I talk in Pregnant Girl about my personal experience with my advisor, which is really that it was not supportive. I did not have great communication. I was an English major and he was an art professor, so he wasn't able to really provide a lot of insight into what major I was in, going into, and just didn't have a lot of time to meet with me. And I talk also more broadly about the real challenge with college advising in this country, and that how many advisors there are to each student, and of course it varies at schools. But the most under-resourced schools, unsurprisingly, have much larger caseloads of students per advisor. And one of the things that is woven throughout, Pregnant Girl, my newest book, Student Parent, but also in the work that we do at Generation Hope, is the power of relationships, the power of community. And when we think about that and how relationships, mentoring, coaching, advising can have such a huge impact on whether a student makes it to the graduation stage. It really illuminates how much of a priority and an investment we need to put into college advising. As I was listening to Mikala and Miah talking about the challenges that they were having, whether it's with C Campus or whether it's, hearing a professor talk to you about the rigor of a major and maybe you shouldn't pursue it. Those are really areas where advisors can be so helpful. They can help to kind of demystify some of these things. They can help to put these things into perspective. They can connect you with resources on campus and off campus. Sometimes they can just be like the office you go to say, I can't do this, those are all really important. And, at Generation Hope, each of our scholars in our direct service program has a mentor. And that mentor is that cheerleader. They're there to make sure that there is someone to text at 2 a.m. when you have a teething baby and a midterm the next day, right? So we really try to walk the walk in that, we see that as a proof point for policymakers, for institutions to say, you know, our graduation rate for our scholars is 62% within 6 years. We have about a 90% retention rate from year to year. And we believe strongly that so much of that has to do with the relationships that are surrounding each of our students in our program. So advising is huge, and it really does help to make a difference for all students, but particularly for parenting students who are holding so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mikala or Miah, I'll hand it over to you.
I'll jump in. In community college, I had great advisor. I say advisors, but it really was a great advisor who really listened to me, listened to my path, would be honest and say, like, I don't know if you're going to be able to do that, but I believe in you and you're sitting here determined. So let's try it out. And if it doesn't work, I'm here to catch you when you fall. And thankfully, I didn't fall. But she, really helped me transfer to my 4 year. Then I got to my 4 year, and let me tell you, just transferring as a student, it's like you did not know all of these barriers that were going to come your way, and how different the system is. But I remember having to make an appointment with my advisor because I was taking summer session, and I was like, okay, who's my advisor? And it was like, all right, if this is your last name and you belong to this school, this is your advisor. And they had 15-minute blocks reserved, and you could only book up to three 15-minute blocks with them a quarter. And it just wasn't that same connection or that same basis that I was used to in the community college. It kind of felt like an in and out experience, like almost like you're in fast food going through a drive-through. Let me give you my order. You can give me one piece of feedback. Time to move on. And that urgency that we were talking about earlier, that go, 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 let's get your degree completed, let's get out of here, is really built in my 4 year university and really in like the UC system in California. And so unfortunately that like was a barrier for me because here I am saying like I'm having this family crisis and there's no resources and my professors aren't understanding and you're telling me that's not what you do as an advisor. So um I think if advisors, are able to and have that capacity to have that more one-on-one, to listen to the students, remember the student's name when they walk in the door,
Mm-hmm.
and be available for students as needed, it would help a lot because I can't even tell you my advisor's name from my UC, but I can tell you my community college's advisor name, and me and her still email back and forth. So, um, if done right, advisors are a great support system, but if done wrong, it feels like a one-stop shop of here you go, have a good day.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And yeah, I think that that's unfortunately a lot of the experience, and a lot of times then advisors don't have the right education or knowledge to help. I've had parenting students reach out before being like, I can't finish school, I need financial aid to help with childcare, whatever. And then I look up their state's childcare access resources, and it was like significant, but the advisors had no idea. Like they didn't even know that they could connect their students with that or with SNAP benefits if students were facing food insecurity. Like there's like so many ways, and it goes back, Nicole, to what you're talking about, like the number of students per advisor. I think the recommendation is around 90 max, right? And typically you're going to see at least like 140, 150 students with one advisor. And so that's in addition to everything else they're doing, like that's a hard to kind of keep on top of. And so, yeah, that's a challenge. Miah, how about you?
So I'm still in community college and I have a similar experience to Mikala. My advisor is great. However, I'm in trio, so I got a trio advisor, and I'm really, really, really good at advocating for myself and researching, like reading everything that I possibly can and doing a comparative analysis. And my advisor calls me a professional student, because during our meetings, she doesn't have to do much work. She just kind of like check in, like she's doing a more letting me know this is a good idea or maybe I should consider this, but she never really helps me course plan. Um, my At my same school though, I've talked to a lot of other students who are like, how do you know about this? Or my advisor didn't tell me that, or my advisor sucks. Like just they'll just say it like that, even at a community college level. So for me, I feel like the experience is a little bit different just because I put so much work in beforehand because I personally feel like I don't have enough time to trust someone else with my future. And like I have too much at stake to trust someone else with my future. So I bring the plan already there and I'm just looking for like that last check mark because I have, again, a 3-year-old. I have somebody counting on me. But I know a lot of people who don't have that capacity. Like it does take a lot of extra time to
Mhm.
go in and read and to look at all the different opportunities and what the outcome is. And you know, I've wound up bringing students like by the tens to student parent resource sessions on campus. Like, hey, did you know about this? Oh, you can get this childcare grant actually through the school. They'll give you this amount of money if your mom is watching the baby, and it's things that they didn't know about and they have advisors. So it kind of shows me like where the gap is. That they're not being exposed to those things, to those resources, and I found them because I'm on the school website, like searching childcare parent resources, and I again, I think that that's almost too much like of a burden for the average parenting student because your kid is like your main focus and takes like all of your mental energy, and then whatever you have left, you sort of siphon to your assignments, and then you're already probably at or above capacity at that point. So
I think the time
yeah, I'm a little scared
poverty,
about the 4 year now that you mentioned that, Mikala.
it depends on where you go, I think.
And
Yeah.
don't be afraid. You persevere, I can tell. You look into your resources, you advocate for yourself, and you support other students in doing that. So don't be scared. You're going to get through it.
Yeah. Yeah. Miah, and I'm always here too. Um, so time poverty, I think as a parenting student is definitely, man, I feel like that's one of the biggest challenges. Is just like how do you get it done between parenting and finishing up your whatever's due for school, like that it's just a lot, plus cooking and all of those things. If you have food at home, like there's just a lot that's there. One of the questions I have for Mikala and Miah, I did open it up. If anyone has questions, please feel free to put those in the chat and we'll go ahead and make sure those get asked. But as we're waiting on those, if we have any, I did want to, one thing that we talk about, Nicole mentioned, is just like letting parenting students know that there are resources available to them and making it easily accessible. Miah, you talked about the fact that you have to like really scourge the site to try to find what's out there. What would be helpful for both of you as parenting students as you're trying to navigate that, like to get that information to you?
I'll jump in here because California's kind of done an amazing thing. California actually has laws in place that require basic needs centers to have a website that shares information and serves as an information hub and is shared with the students. And so I know no matter where I'm at in California, whether it's a community college, a CSU, and or a UC, they have that access directly on the website, and it's like buckets. So like our student parents, our veteran students, our DACA students, like all of our resources are listed right there and accessible. And then something that California has recently done, like policy wise, and I've worked on and advocated for, is requiring universities to share information with certain demographics. If they check a student parent box at registration or in their yearly survey, you have to send them that childcare resource. You have to send them C campus information. And it can be as simple as an email, but if that one student parent opens it and it opens that door for that student parent, they're going to share it with their other friends that are student parents because we all know who each other are. And so, really tailoring that access of information to your students and the groups of students, and that can be applied in any realm or bucket we talk about. And it's helped a lot in California. I can't speak, across the United States, but I hope to see other states implement that, or even other university systems implement that.
Yeah, thank you. Miah, do you have any thoughts?
I would just agree with Mikala. I think like the whole intra-national like case study concept is really important because there are states that are getting it right. And Nicole said that too, right? Like in New Mexico, they're doing an amazing job. I think looking at states that are doing it right is just pretty much the best thing that we can do because I live in Louisiana now. I'm back in Louisiana and finishing my associates online through Normandale. And Minnesota, there's a stark contrast between Minnesota and Louisiana as far as like what the resources are. Even just calling the county and trying to get set up for EBT, like for SNAP or for healthcare and doing those interviews and whatnot, like it's a night and day. So I think having that having that as a policy where it's like, no, you have to send this to students, and there has to be there's a designated team to make sure all of this makes sense, and that information is sent out, and that the door is being at least presented so a student can open it. I think would be the most helpful thing, because I know for sure if I didn't have to spend the time looking for those things and they were sent to me like in a newsletter, that would have been a huge relief, and it would also made me feel like there was a space for me, because like when I started community college, I went in and I was like, I'm going to put my nose down to the ground. I'm going to get everything done that I need to get done, and I'm going to be in and out, because I was like, this is not a space for me. I felt like I didn't make the best choices in life. And so now I'm giving myself a second chance, but like I don't belong here. I consistently felt like I don't belong here. And every single thing that was done, every student parent seminar, whatever, all of that helped me feel like this actually is a place for me and I do belong here. And that improved my college experience and made it something that, you know, I was proud of, and that I like learned, I grew to actually really love. I really love being in school and like learning, and my daughter seeing me do assignments and talking to her, in a 3-year-old way about like her anatomy. And I even I literally started crying when I got a biology student like honors, because I did an accelerated anatomy class, and I was like crying because I was like, this class is over. Like I'm sad that my class is over, and I never thought that I would feel that way on campus. So everything that giving that tailoring that information, like Mikala said, really helps people feel like they belong. And that made a world of difference for me as far as retention goes.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. We just recently, and I think Christian's looking for it right now, but we just recently published a report that did a scan of what different states are doing to support parenting students related to basic needs access and those things. Thank you, Christian. And then we're getting ready to publish in the next couple months a toolkit for institutions on ways like promising practices that we've seen throughout the country. So yeah, we're definitely excited to share that so that others can look and see what are scalable opportunities. Whether it's a lot of that you have a lot of resources for it or you have very few resources for it. Like, what are those scalable opportunities? So thank you. All right, we don't have a lot. We don't really have any questions today. You guys are doing a great job of answering apparently a lot. I would love to ask you all. I think what my most important question always is. What is the one thing you hope people walk away with from today's conversation? Like either course of action would you like them to take? What piece of knowledge would you like them to have? It could be anything.
I can, oh, Michaela, you go.
We haven't heard from you in a while, Nicole. I'll go after you.
Okay. I'm going to cheat and I'm going to say two things.
That's good.
The first thing is something that I think we've touched on many times in the conversation, which is that, the barriers that student parents face are historically informed. They are deeply entrenched in our economics and in our higher education system. And, for us to come out of this, to really remove these barriers for parenting students and for families that want to achieve the American dream, we're going to need to do some real reckoning, some real naming and acknowledging of these barriers and how we got here, and real intentionality to kind of build ourselves out of this place where college and economic mobility feels so unattainable for millions of families across the country. And we talked about that intentionality that has gotten us to this place. We have to have our intentionality to get us out of this place. And I would also say my second one that I'm cheating and adding really speaks to the power of having both Mikala and Miah in this conversation, which is we have to do that intentional work, locking arms with the people who are most impacted. And really, I think we've heard so many golden nuggets from Mikala and Miah today about policies and practices that had good intentions, right? That may have had these really good intentions, but are impeding their ability to really provide for their families, complete their education, put food on the table. And we're going to find that we're not going to make headway if we don't really start to see parenting students and families that are navigating these challenges as experts and really craft policies both at the public policy level, but at the institutional level that are informed by, driven by, and led by parenting students themselves. Mikala, I love that you were involved in so many of the good things that have happened for student parents policy-wise in the state of California. I think that's a great example of, what we need to be seeing across the board is that we are really considering our student parents as leaders in this work and hearing them and not just having them sit around the table and provide their perspective, but acting on it and saying, okay, we missed the mark here. This what both Miah and Mikala are describing is the cliff effect, right, of public benefits, where you get to a certain point and then you range out of it and you make too much money and then there's a cliff that so many families are facing. We've got to listen to families and understand, how we can mitigate that. How can we create that buffer, right? But we're not going to be able to do that if we're not really hearing and acting on what our families are experiencing. So I think those would be my two big things that I hope people walk away with.
Yeah, I'm glad you picked two.
I kind of made it into three buckets. The first to like our advocates and our policymakers that are watching this, thank you for your work. Continue doing your work. Continue those conversations with student parents. It's evolving what we need and it's changing rapidly, but the policies that have been implemented even in the last 4 to 5 years really are life changing because here I am graduating and I don't think I could have said the same thing, 10 to 15 years ago. Student parents, and this is really touching on what Miah said, like we as student parents, we see you, but you belong. You belong here. You belong in your college. You belong in that class. You belong in that club just as much as everybody else does. Don't be afraid to make your space, and speak up because we all, we're all living our first college experience or our second college experience, so enjoy it. And then lastly, like really touching back on our faculty and our professors is like flexibility goes a long way. And I understand bridges get burnt with students and you provide flexibility and then that student lets you down, but speaking for student parents, we're not going to let you down. If we're asking for an extension of a weekend, it's because we've got 4 sport games, a sick kid, and a family emergency popping up. But if I'm telling you on Monday I'm going to get it to you, that means I'm going to get it to you. So have faith in us and don't just tell us like drop it, take it later. Like I'm just trying to get out of here and get my degree and show my kids I know how to do it. And yeah, so thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on the panel and speak about, what I face as a student parent today. And I'm always willing to speak on the things I've talked about today. So if anyone wants more information, connect with Tanya because I love to talk about it and help build my other student parents up.
Thank you, Mikala.
Yeah, I think that y'all have definitely said a lot, and I completely agree. My one thing that I would like to say is that just like don't lose hope. There's tons of hope. There's tons of people doing the work. It is an uphill battle, but it's not a futile one. I found myself really, really sinking into like borderline nihilism for a while because I just like looked at the State of the Union and thought like there's no hope. Um, but that's not true. It's really not true. And there's tons of hope and there's tons of people who are fighting for people like me and making a space for people like me and people that are doing it at the same time. So yeah, just don't lose hope. I think that's my biggest my biggest takeaway from today's conversation and what I would want to impart because if you lose hope, then there's no change. So we can do it.